So Top Gun Maverick is officially here as a movie. It was bound to happen sooner or later, I suppose. 40 years after the events of the first film, Pete Maverick is called back to be an instructor at the Top Gun school, whipping into shape a new generation of pilots, one of them being the son of Goose, along with all the Top Gun stuff that you'd expect, as we saw in the previous film. The over-the-top, insanely entertaining flight sequences, the team bonding scenes on the beach. In a lot of ways, a typical military movie that wears its patriotism on its sleeve. In the 1980s, it was able to get away with it, and I was worried that it was going to come off as too ham-fisted this time around, but thankfully, not in this case. Most people have said it by now, but I am very much in with the majority. This movie was so enthralling and so entertaining, and a perfect sequel in just about every shape or form. I still remember seeing a clip of Tom Cruise on this show that he was on a few years ago when he officially announced that Top Gun 2 was coming.
Rumors of a Top Gun 2. Please say it's true.
It's true.
Really?
Yeah, it's true.
Really?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
When? Tom!
It's true.
That reaction the one reporter had, that was me too. I thought, what'd you just say? And Tom Cruise being arguably the biggest action star on the Hollywood scene at the moment, I'll watch that guy in anything he's in. I have yet to see Tom Cruise give a bad performance. Every movie I've seen him in, he gives 110% to his roles. Top Gun Maverick, no exception to the rule. He still comes off the way he did in the first film, albeit a lot more mature and much more wiser, and still, in a lot of ways, haunted by the death of Goose. And thankfully, this film provides a satisfying resolution for that situation. When Rooster, played by Miles Teller, Goose's son, comes in to train as a pilot, and clearly exhibits some resentment towards Maverick over what happened to his father all those years ago, the film is able to beautifully convey that he still feels a lot of guilt and responsibility over what happened. Like the one scene where Rooster shows up in the bar to play Great Balls of Fire on the piano, just like Goose and Maverick did in the first film, and when Maverick hears that song, instantly takes him right back to those times. And when Jennifer Connelly sees him outside the bar, she knows what's going through his head, as do we. And they also show it in his text message exchanges between him and Iceman, who was once again played by Val Kilmer in one scene. And the reason for his role, being stricken with some kind of form of cancer, where he can't really talk but has to type it out on a computer, it got me. I was really touched by it, and they play on the whole, hey, who's the better pilot, you or me? And they end it with a joke where Maverick says, this is a nice moment, let's not ruin it. As for the other returning characters that they could have brought back in, Iceman was probably the most necessary character outside of Maverick to come back. Then it would have felt too much like a, hey, remember this guy, remember that guy? Just like in No Way Home, Ghostbusters Afterlife, and Star Wars The Force Awakens. Yeah, I said it, come and get me. This movie perfectly blends nostalgia and new stuff at the same time. The opening scene where we see the fighter planes take off from the aircraft carrier and Kenny Loggins' Highway to the Danger Zone plays, even though I kind of figured that was going to happen anyway, it was still, I think, a really exciting way to get people back into it, and I just couldn't stop smiling throughout that whole sequence. The film is also directed by a man named Joseph Kosinski, who I believe collaborated with Tom Cruise prior on films like Oblivion. Tony Scott, who did the previous film, has unfortunately passed away a number of years ago, and I wasn't really sure how this was going to come off. I thought it was going to be very cheap and just kind of basic and standard, but Kosinski directs this film with such a unique intensity. Considering that Tom Cruise likes to make the audience feel that they're in the thick of the action, he directs the flight sequences superbly. I mean, there's probably other words I can use. Watching this on a big screen with a crowd that was respectful, thankfully. Talk about an adrenaline-fueled thrill ride. Filming it from the bird's eye view of the cockpit when they're practicing catching each other in a dogfight or target practice or going on those practicing runs, and when the mission actually takes place that Maverick keeps training the pilots on, that's when all of our adrenalines really started to kick in. And I was looking around at certain people. They had their eyes glued to the screen the entire time. And I looked over at my mom, who was sitting to my left. She was starting to bite her fingernails, and I started to do that too, like this. Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. And I was wondering if we were gonna look like Barney Fife chewing our fingernails right down to the knuckle. Basically, the mission of this movie is that they have to destroy this uranium depot underneath this big mountain in this crater. Somewhere, I believe, in Europe. I'm gonna guess Eastern Europe. They never say specifically what country it is. And to my knowledge, the Navy does approve of these movies, and they have to be careful with what nationalities they might mention, because it could cause some controversy, and I think it was best to just keep it vague. And you could probably guess, at least for me, that it was probably somewhere in the Balkans or Eastern Europe. I don't know. Still, what the hell, it was an exciting sequence. And the thing about that sequence that I was actually kind of surprised and relieved to see, nobody dies in this movie. Not a single person. They could have easily had Maverick go out in a blaze of glory in order to exhibit some kind of peaceful resolution for what happened with Goose and let Rooster live. Or maybe they could have had both him and Rooster die, which is what I thought for a second what was going to happen. Similar beats from the original are present, such as Ed Harris's character, who comes off as the one character from the beginning of the first film, or John Hamm's character, the one admiral who could have easily gotten rid of Maverick or could have been booted himself for trying to figure out what to do with Maverick after he showed that it was possible to complete that mission, where he says, "You left me with a difficult choice. Do I reprimand you and kick you out? Or do I actually let you go on this mission?" And the team bonding scene where they play football on the beach, very similar to the volleyball sequence in the first one. Not so much emphasis on the topless body shots, because that's the one thing that was kind of overdone in the original Top Gun, now that I think about it. And some people have pointed out the homoerotic undertones. Maybe that's kind of a stretch, but it is noticeable, and if that kind of thing were done today, I don't think that would have gone over so well with certain audience members. That's neither here nor there. And we get to meet some of the trainees, like Fanboy, Payback, and the one guy named Bob, who doesn't really seem like he has a sense of humor, but yet he has some of the best comeback lines throughout the movie. And someone like Hangman can't really seem to come up with a good comeback. Hangman is basically the Iceman of this class. He picks on Rooster, but the rivalry is not quite as intense as it was in the original, and which was also kind of refreshing because it probably would have felt too similar, I suppose, depending on how it was done in execution. And when he ends up actually saving Maverick and Rooster, he still remains more or less the same, but he actually learns an important lesson to go save his fellow pilots. They call him Hangman because he would just leave you hanging out to dry. And when he sees certain events play out in the climax, that's when he learns the importance of teamwork. And certain emotional beats that play throughout the film, like when he says goodbye to the one fellow naval pilot or whatever that was helping him test out the Mach 9 and Mach 10, there's a small look that guy has where he realizes, oh man, I might not actually see this guy ever again after today. That's something that I don't think Top Gun gets a lot of credit for. A lot of people talk about the flight sequences and the whole "I feel the need for speed." All that is really good stuff, and we all like seeing that. But there's an undercurrent of emotion brewing inside of these characters, which for me makes it all the better. And we get a scene that's very reminiscent to the movie Behind Enemy Lines with Owen Wilson, but there's no big fist fights or hand-to-hand combat scenes. All these other pilots from this airfield that they bomb, they don't know what's going on. They're totally oblivious that these two American pilots are trying to steal this F-14, which is an old relic at this point, and makes it all the more nerve-wracking when those two enemy pilots see what's going on, which was a totally white-knuckled sequence. I was literally gripping my seat. Quite a few moments where I thought, okay, Rooster's gonna die. Oh no, Maverick's gonna go. But as I said, nobody dies. And it gives the film a much needed satisfying resolution. As for Jennifer Connelly, I don't know if she's actually the character that Tom Cruise dated in the previous film, or maybe this is somebody different entirely. That's probably the one aspect that I could have done without, but at the same time, I think it did provide the emotional weight that was needed. I don't have anything against Jennifer Connelly. She's a fine actress, but it wasn't quite as interesting as the other stuff that was happening. And team of classmates that Maverick teaches, they're pretty basic and standard, except for a few like Rooster and Hangman, and maybe to a certain degree Bob. In my mind, the others don't really stand out as much. Miles Teller I've always really liked, and this I think is one of his best movies. And I would like to see Miles Teller continue to get more work. If you ask me, he's one of the best actors in the business right now. This is the kind of film that needs to be seen on the biggest screen possible. Standard, IMAX, drive-in, I don't care. If you can see this on a giant movie screen, please do so. Especially after the last 2 years we've experienced. I'm just happy to see a movie like this again. In fact, there's even an introduction that Tom Cruise has before the movie starts. He talks a little bit about how hard they worked to make this look as real and exciting as possible for the audience, and why they waited so long for this movie to come out. Considering now that COVID's fallen by the wayside in some ways, there's no more opportune time than now. So if you could see Top Gun Maverick at any point at your local movie theater, go out and support this thing. It deserves every ticket purchase coming its way. Those are my thoughts on Top Gun Maverick. What are you guys' thoughts on the movie? And what are your thoughts on the original too? I may or may not do a review on that. I already talked about it once before with 22 Tiger Dude in a collab video. That was a long time ago, but I had a really good time doing it at that point. But I have considered talking about the original in light of the sequel coming out. So let me know whether or not you guys are interested in seeing me talk about the original, and I'll see you guys in the next one.